Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Undiscovered Games video podcast where we take a look at the lesser known board games of the world and share those with you. It's hard to believe Christmas is almost here. It's only a couple weeks away already and the holiday season is in full swing. Hopefully everybody out there is having fun getting together with family and friends. It's such a good time of year to do that and visit with everyone and of course play lots of board games. So not everybody is into these heavy strategy Euro games that I feature on this channel, and that's why I wanted to take some time and feature some party games that I actually enjoy. Now, the reason I say actually enjoy is because I just don't play a lot of party games. We are Euro gamers in this house. We play a lot of strategy games. We like to challenge our brains and try to outthink each other and things like that. But I realize not everyone is into that sort of thing. So that's why I'm featuring some games from my collection that I keep for specific moments, like big family get-togethers or maybe some friends that aren't really into board gaming, things like that. I'm going to feature the lesser known ones first and go into more detail on those, and then I'll cover some of the more popular ones near the end of the video. So what do I look for in a good party game? Well, first and foremost is the ability to make people laugh. Does the game stimulate laughter at the table? If so, that's a start. That's a plus. Next is obviously it accommodates a larger group. So not a game for 2 to 4 players. Finally, does the game allow you to be creative? I think this is a really important key for me personally, as someone who likes heavier strategy games. I want to at least be able to use my brain a little bit and be creative, have fun, think outside the box a little bit. I grew up playing the classic party games like Pictionary or, Taboo or Balderdash, games that you have to be creative to do well, yet it's still a party game, and that's what I'm looking for. And I love Balderdash to this day. That's one of my favorite all-time party games, but most of you out there are probably familiar with Balderdash, and this is the Undiscovered Games video podcast, so let's get into some of these lesser-known party games. Hopefully there's some games on this list that you've never heard of, and you can look into them farther if you want. So, in no particular order, this is my list of party games I actually enjoy. First on the list today is a wonderful little game called Ranking. This was designed by one of my favorite designers, Stefan Dora, along with Ralph Zerlind. They teamed up on the game Milestones, which I featured a few episodes ago, but this game is nothing like Milestones. I always say Ranking is the best bluffing game that you've never heard of. Now, this is a borderline party game. This kind of blurs the line between strategy and party game, but I still consider this a party game because it stimulates some really funny moments, some great conversations, and there's some bluffing, some sneaky moves you have to do, and it just feels lighthearted like a party game, but there is a little bit of strategy to it, and that's why I like it as a gamer. Now, the box says 3 to 5 players, and I'll tell you right now, we've played this with up to 7 players, and it works just fine. You just have to create some makeshift components to keep track of the score and to, mark those player pieces, but you can play this with up to 7 players. So the basic concept of Ranking is at the beginning of the round, you're going to draw a question out of the bag. Each player is then going to submit one tile in secret to the center of the table, face down. All the tiles get mixed up and then revealed, and then players take turns moving one tile up and one tile down in relation to the question. They have to explain why they're moving one up, why they're moving one down, and then at the end of the round, you'll have one tile ending up on each space of this tower. The goal is to get your tile secretly as high up on this tower as possible without being too obvious, because as soon as players start to, guess which one is yours, then they're going to start voting for you, which knocks points off of your score if they're correct. So I'll show you how this all works, but that's the basic idea, is secretly sort of bluffing your tile as high up on this tower as possible by the end of the round, and then you're going to score points. The points are tracked here on this tower. You have these little arrow pieces, and you have to go up the tower, hit the rooftop, turn around, and come back down and exit the tower. The first player to exit the tower will win the game. So let's show you how this works. At the beginning of the round, the start player will reach in the bag and pull out one question from the bag. There's a bunch of comparative style questions in this bag that compare one thing to another. For example, this tile here says, which will you more often see at amusement parks? So this little tile goes at the top of the tower here. It's like a little flag, which is kind of cool. Now, each player secretly submits one of their tiles. Everybody has a hand of 6 picture tiles here, and they have to submit one that best answers this question. So I'm looking through my hand here. I don't have a lot of good options. I could use these coins. Maybe these are like, tokens to play the arcade games. Or maybe this is like a security guard's flashlight. Or, maybe this amusement park has a water park. So I'll go ahead and submit the bikini as my choice. So this goes face down in the middle of the table. Everybody does this. And then once everybody's done, we bring the total tiles in the middle up to 7. So you just have to draw from the supply, keep them all face down, and bring that total up to 7 face down tiles. So there's going to be some tiles mixed in that players did not submit. So you mix all these tiles face down, and then you reveal them face up, and you line them up on space number 3 here of the tower. Now players take their turns one at a time in clockwise order, and on your turn you pick any 2 tiles that are in the same row. And what you're doing is comparing those 2 tiles as they relate to the question. So for an example, I might choose to compare the bikini to the dog, and I'll say, amusement parks usually have water parks, but they don't allow pets, so you're more often going to see bikinis at amusement parks than you will dogs. And then I move the bikini up 1 and the dog down 1. So whichever one you see more often gets moved up a space, and whichever one you see less often moves down a space. Then it becomes the next player's turn. They can pick any 2 tiles in the same row. Right now, they're limited to this row here. And they will say, I'll compare the life preserver to the slingshot. So which one of these would you see more often at amusement parks? Well, hopefully you're going to be seeing more life preservers than slingshots, because amusement parks have water parks and they don't allow weapons. So the life preserver moves up 1 and the slingshot moves down 1. Then it would become the next player's turn. Now they can choose 2 tiles from this row, 2 tiles from this row, or 2 tiles from this row to compare. Now the ultimate goal here is to get your secret tile as high up this tower as possible by the end of the round. So let's say this player secretly submitted the dog. Now they're going to use this opportunity to move the dog back up. So they're going to compare the dog to the slingshot. So maybe they say something like, amusement parks do allow service animals, but they don't allow weapons. So you're going to see more dogs than slingshots. So the dog goes up 1 and the slingshot goes down another 1. Now the next player is going to compare the bikini and the life preserver. Let's say they say something like, it's winter, the water park is actually closed right now, so nobody is wearing bikinis right now, but the water park still has those life preservers, and you might see those when you're at the park. So let's move the life preserver up and the bikini down. Now that might make some players suspicious, and you're allowed to place a voting token on someone's picture if you think that's their picture. So if I think the red player that was kind of a suspicious explanation, I can take my red voting token, place it on this, and if I'm correct at the end, that will knock 1 point off of their score wherever their tile ends up. Because ultimately you want your tile to ascend this tower and end up as high up here as possible. Because whatever space your tile ends on is going to be your points, but then you have to subtract a point per correct vote that other players made, thinking, this is your tile. If they were correct in that, that's minus 1 point per correct vote. So you just keep taking turns. Eventually this all shakes out where there's only 1 tile on each space here of the tower. And at that point, the round ends and you divvy out points. Like I said, whoever's tile is up here is going to get 6 points, and then 5 points for whoever's tile this is, and so on. So after all that, if my bikini tile ended up on the 5, but then I had 3 players vote for me that they thought this was my tile, I would get 5 minus 3, so I would get 2 points. And then I would just move my little arrow up 2 on the tower. All those picture tiles get discarded from the game. Each player refills their hand up to 6, and then you just do it all again. You draw a new question out of the bag. Everybody submits 1 tile face down. You bring that total up to 7, mix them up, reveal them, line them up on space 3 of the tower, and start taking turns comparing 2 tiles. And there's a lot more little subtle nuances than you first think when you see this game, because you're thinking about, first of all, which tile do I submit to the middle? Because if you have a really good picture that goes with that question, a lot of times players will move your tile up for you without even knowing it. A lot of times the best picture makes it to the top of the tower on its own. And it's kind of fun to weigh, when can I rely on the group to move my tile up for me? Or when should I try to bluff my own tile up? Or when should I compare 2 other tiles that aren't even mine? And sometimes it makes sense to make some ridiculous comparison and try to bait the other players into wasting their guessing tokens on you. So there's all these little fun mind games you can play. That's the gamer in me that likes that part of it. But this is a game that will appeal to all audiences. We get requests for this all the time, especially this time of year when we have family get-togethers. Everybody's like, bring ranking. We love that game because it's just funny. I mean, it's funny to hear everyone's comparisons. They can get so ridiculous sometimes. And, this game just has a lot of laughter. I love when players start, making excuses for their tiles. Like, actually, this is a donut with red and white icing on it. It's not really a life preserver. and then they'll explain why this is actually a donut, and the donut moves up instead of, so there's a lot of fun you can have with it, and that's why I consider this more of a party game than a strategy game. So that's ranking. Let's keep the list moving here with another party game that I actually enjoy. This one's from the year 2000, and it's called Moods. This is for 3 to 8 players. This came out from Hasbro Games, and I think you can still find this one pretty easy on the secondhand market. I'm not sure if it's still in print, but this is a very simple concept here, and this is great if you like to act or get into character, because in this game you're trying to get other players to guess your mood correctly. So the way it works is there's this deck of cards. Each card has a different mood, such as apologetic, angry, romantic, amused, embarrassed, mysterious, sneaky, surprised. You get the idea. Giant deck of cards here. You mix them up and you place one mood on each number on the board. They're numbered 0 through 9. Players are going to take turns being the reader, and the reader has to read this ridiculous phrase in a certain mood. And then the other players have to bet on which mood they think the reader is. The way it works is the reader rolls a 10-sided die. That number is going to tell the reader what mood they have to be. They keep that secret from the other players, obviously. And then they just draw a card from this deck of cards, which has all these funny sayings. It's just little sentences like, what's it going to take to get you into this car? Or just there's a bunch of these ridiculous phrases like, what's for dinner, mom? And so on. So the reader has to read that phrase in their current mood. And after they read it, all the other players have a chance to bet on one of the moods. Now, this is where the game gets kind of interesting as a strategy gamer. Now, it's very simple, but each player gets 4 betting chips numbered 1 through 4. Whichever betting chip you bet with, if you're correct, you're going to move ahead on the score track that many points. For example, if I bet with my number 4 chip and I'm correct, I move up 4 points. The catch is you don't get that chip back until you use your other 3, and you can only use 1 per round. So you have to make sure when you spend your 4 betting chip, you have to be very certain that that's the correct mood, because if you're incorrect, you don't get any points, and then you don't get your 4 token back. So this sounds like a simple idea, but this adds just enough depth to the game for me as a strategy gamer to find it interesting. Now you're not just trying to guess the right answer, but you're trying to guess how certain you are that it's the right answer. So it adds that little extra depth to it that makes all the difference. And this is trickier than it sounds too, because a lot of these cards could be kind of similar, these different moods. For example, you might have like sneaky, and then you might also have suspicious out there. And you're like, I don't know if they're being sneaky or suspicious. So in that situation, you would want to bet low, like with your 1 token. So just a simple, subtle layer there that I really enjoy as a heavier gamer. Now, another thing I like about this game from a design point of view is it incentivizes both sides of the table. The reader has incentive to read well and really get the other players to guess their mood correctly, because the more players that guess the correct mood, the more points the reader gets to score. On the other side of the coin, the players who are betting obviously have incentive to guess correctly, because whatever token they decide to bet with is going to determine how many points they score if they bet correctly. So both sides of the table are incentivized to play the game as it was meant to be played. So the game just continues until one player crosses the finish line. After a round, the player in clockwise order around the table becomes the next reader, and then the other players are the bettors. One more thing to note is these mood cards do come out different every round. So any cards that have betting chips on them, whether they were correct or incorrect bets, those cards get removed and then they get replenished with new moods for the next round. So it's always fun to see the new moods that come out. Sometimes, like I said, you'll have multiple moods out there that are very similar, and that's going to complicate your betting decisions in that following round. So that's the game of Moods. This is a great icebreaker type of a game. It really gets people laughing, gets them out of their shell a little bit, and we've gotten a lot of fun out of this game over the past 15 or 20 years. We've had this game forever, and we still break it out from time to time. Like I said, there's just enough depth there for me as a gamer to be interested, just choosing which betting token to use and when. I love that commitment decision that you get in this game, and that's nothing crazy intense or innovative or anything. It's a very simple idea, but it works well. So that's Moods. We're going to keep the list moving here to another party game. This one is called Detective Club. Now, some of you out there might be familiar with this because it's only about 5 years old, and I remember this had a little buzz around it when it first came out. I don't hear anybody talk about this game anymore, which is unfortunate because to me, this is one of the best party games out there. I love Detective Club. This is for 4 to 8 players. This is a game about giving clues, but there's going to be one player at the table who's not in the loop. They do not know the clue, but they have to act like they do. And it's so funny. So the way it works is everybody has this hand of cards, and these cards have all this funky artwork, weird stuff going on all these cards. And there's one clue giver each round. The clue giver's job is to look through their hand of cards, and they secretly choose 2 cards that they want to relate somehow. So let's say I was looking through my hand, I'm the clue clue giver, and I see this bird, and then I see this like hot air balloon. So I'm thinking of a clue that might relate those two. So maybe I give the clue flight. It's always a one-word clue, and I write the word flight on all of these notepads except for one. I leave one notepad blank. Then I mix the notepads face down and deal 1 to each player. So there's going to be one player at the table that does not know the clue is flight, but everybody else does. Now, as the clue giver, I play my first card in front of me so everybody can see it. And then we take turns going around the table. Each player plays one card from their hand that relates to the clue flight. But remember, one player does not know the clue, so they just play a card. But they're looking around at all the other cards that have been played and trying to figure out what is the clue, because they don't want to be obvious that they don't know it. So then it gets back to me and I play my second card that relates to flight. Then we go around the table, everybody plays their second card. Finally, it gets back to me, the clue giver. Now I announce the clue to everyone. I say the clue was flight. Here I have a bird and here I have a hot air balloon. Now is where the game gets hilarious. So you take turns going around the table and each player has to explain why they played the two cards that they played. How do those cards relate to the clue flight? At the end of everybody's explanations, then each player gets to vote on the player that they think did not know the clue. And that's funny in and of itself, just the fact that one player has to, lie and act like they knew the clue the whole time and explain why they chose these cards. But what I think is even more funny is a lot of times the players that do know the clue just simply don't have good cards to play to match the clue. So they sound like they're lying. This player might play these for flight, knowing full well that the clue is flight, but they just didn't have any cards in their hands. So now they have to be like, well, this was like a beer mug and it's like a beer flight. And then they sound like they're lying, and then everybody gets suspicious of everybody at the table. And it's really hard to choose sometimes who you think is actually lying. And that's what I think is so good about this game, because there's only one liar at the table each round, but by the end of the round, everybody sounds like they're lying. But then you can only vote on one player each who you think is the liar. And then you give out points based on if you guessed it correctly or not. So if you guessed the liar correctly, you'll get 3 points. But then if only 1 or 0 players guess the liar correctly, then the liar gets to score like 5 points. And the clue giver also gets to score 4 points in that situation. And you just take turns being the clue giver, going around the table clockwise, and you can decide however many rounds you want to play. Whoever has the most points at the end of that is the winner. And it really doesn't matter who wins, because this game is just so much fun. We have so many laughs at the table trying to explain those cards, even when you knew the clue the whole time, and then you just get stuck with a bad hand of cards, and it's like you have to try to explain your way through that. That's just as much fun as when you don't know the clue and you're trying to explain and act like you did know the clue the whole time. So this is such a great little party game. I love the way the cards look. These big, beautiful cards, lots of color on the table, really draws people into this game and just lightens the mood. I love the way the little wooden magnifying glasses look. You don't really need those, but those are pretty cool because that's how you vote on who you think is lying. This is just a great production by Blue Orange Games, and everything I want in a party game. Lots of laughter, lots of ways to bluff and be creative, and in our experience, even players who don't like bluffing games really enjoy this one right here. So high marks for me, Detective Club, check it out. And now we're going to move on to one of my favorite games to stimulate laughter, and that is called Snake Oil. Snake Oil is all about selling these ridiculous products to a customer, and the sales pitches in this game will literally bring you to tears if you have the right group of people playing. I mean, this is one of the few games that I have just cried laughing playing this. And this works very similar to games like Apples to Apples, where you have like one person, everybody submits a card, and you want them to choose yours. Except in this game, you have a chance to really sell your card to the customer. And the way it works, there's one customer. You just take turns being the customer going around the table. The customer is going to draw a card off of this deck here, and they can choose either the front or the back to be the customer. So for example, we have a teenager or a geek or a nurse or a cowboy. So for this example, let's say the player chose the cowboy. Now all the other players take turns trying to sell a specific product to the cowboy. And the way you do this is you look through your hand of 6 cards. These cards have all different words on them, and you have to combine 2 cards to create a product. For example, maybe I want to sell this cowboy a secret feather, or maybe I want to sell them a kite light, or possibly a rope tank. You get the idea. You pick any 2 cards, and then you spend about 30 seconds pitching your product to the customer. So in this example, maybe I want to sell this cowboy a rope tank, and I'll say, listen, partner, you're out there on the ranch all day. You've got all these different ropes. You're trying to rope in your cattle. You're trying to fix fences. You need a place to store all your ropes. You need a tank to store your ropes. This tank is waterproof. Your ropes won't get wet. They won't get damaged by the sun. Blah, 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 blah. And you sell your product. And then the cowboy considers it. And then they go to the next player. And the next player is like, no, cowboy, what you really need is my foot raft here. I'm going to sell you this foot raft for a lot cheaper than his rope tank. And this foot raft is going to ease all your back pain. After you've been working hard on the ranch all day, wearing those uncomfortable cowboy boots, you come back home, you just want to prop your feet up. This foot raft goes right in the tub. You can take a hot bath, and it will keep your feet afloat and elevated, which is better for your circulation. You get the idea. So the players just take turns pitching their product. You go around the table, and finally the cowboy would decide which sales pitch they like the best. And then whoever they choose, they get that customer card as a point. So it works just like apples to apples, except in snake oil, you actually have the opportunity to influence the customer into choosing you. But what I like even more than that is the ability to combine these cards and how they can create these hilarious sounding products. And you can even flip-flop them. Like I did the rope tank in my example, but maybe you want to sell a tank rope. It's a rope that goes in your water tank, and you can do this and that with it. So you can be really, really creative in this game, and you get to sell your product. That's what elevates this game above other games like Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples, all those hundreds of games that are out there that are very similar to that idea. For me, I only need one of those types of games in my game collection, and Snake Oil is it for me. Some of the most, hilarious memories I have from playing any board game come from Snake Oil. And obviously that depends on the group you play it with, but if you get the right group of people together, some of those sales pitches can be absolutely off the wall in the best way possible, and you'll be like quoting them for 5 years to come. We still quote this game from 5 years ago. We remember those ridiculous sales pitches over the years, and to me, that's the purpose of a game like this. So that's Snake Oil. Let's keep the list moving to another party game that I actually enjoy, and that is called Funglish. Now, this came out in 2009, another one from Hasbro Games, and you can play this with just about any number of players because it's a team-based game along the lines of popular games like Charades or Taboo, where you have a card with a bunch of words on it, and you're just trying to get your teammates to guess as many words from that card as they can before the timer runs out. But what I like about Funglish is the challenge that it presents, because there is extremely limited communication here. So you draw a card, it has 6 random words on it. Your goal is to get your teammates to guess as many of those words as possible before the sand timer runs out. The catch is you are not allowed to speak, you are not allowed to act. Instead, you have to organize all these adjective tiles in such a way that it describes the word. So for example here, if I had the word honey, I was trying to get my team to guess the word honey, I have to use this stand here, which is divided into 3 sections. We have definitely, kind of, and not. So as soon as the sand timer gets flipped, I start digging through these tiles frantically, just trying to find words that fit the word honey. And so I could maybe put like smooth, like definitely smooth, kind of liquid, kind of orange, not black, not bright, kind of clear. And you just keep adding words here, and people are shouting out guesses. And as soon as somebody guesses honey, you clear these off and you go on to the next one. Octopus, kind of smooth, not furry. Let's see if we can find a definitely ugly. I don't know. So you just keep doing this, and then when the timer runs out, you have to stop. And then however many words your team guessed correctly, that's how many points you get for that round. And then it goes to the other team, and they have a reader, and they do the same thing. And you just play until a certain team hits a predetermined number of points or whatever. So that game is very easy to learn and teach. Like I said, it's kind of been done before with charades and other games like that, where you're trying to get your team to guess the words. But this game is unique because you have to use other words to get them to guess the words, and you can't speak, you can't act. And I just like the challenge of Funglish. And another thing is, this game kind of fascinates me, how many words you can get people to guess just by using the adjectives that are provided here and then organizing them into those 3 categories. Because the game, it gives you a lot of tiles of adjectives, but it's not that many words, you know what I mean? And you're able to use those to narrow it down and a lot of times get a full card completed in a very short amount of time. And that's kind of fascinating to me, just that you can use that few of words to narrow it down and get your team to guess the right answer. So it's kind of a neat idea, and that's why I like this game, Funglish. Now, before I conclude this episode, I want to briefly discuss some of the more popular party games in my collection. I like to keep this channel dedicated to the lesser known games, but if you've never played any of these games I'm about to mention, definitely add these to your list. First, we have Ready, Set, Bet. This is a real-time betting game where you have a horse race going on. You can roll dice to determine how the horses move, or you can just use the free app and the horses will race for you. And as they race, you're placing bets on the board, whether you want this horse to finish first, second, or third. There's all these cool little side bets and prop bets that come out differently every race. There's all these little fun twists on what is a very simple, straightforward betting game, but it makes it a little bit different each time and adds some excitement. And it's so much fun to cheer on your horse. Everybody's up and jumping around the table screaming, and it's just such a fun time. It plays up to 9 players, which is excellent for a party game. And that, as a board game, is currently in my top 50 games of all time. I think it's that good of a game. So check out Ready, Set, Bet if you've never played that one. Another really fun party game, it's kind of a borderline party game, is called Camel Up, and this time you're betting on a camel race. But this one has a little bit more strategy to it. This plays 3 to 8 players, and I love Camel Up. This is one of my absolute favorite games to play with a group because it feels like a fun party game, but there's a little bit of depth to this game. For example, on your turn, you only get one choice of an action, but there's all these different things you could do. Like you could roll one die and that moves a camel, or you could take a betting ticket and hope for a payout, or you can bet on an overall winner or an overall loser at the end of the race. And what I like about this game is it has these little interim payouts. Every time 5 dice get rolled, you do a payout based on the current state of the race. So like whichever camel is winning at that point will pay out. And then there's an overall winner and loser payout once they make a complete lap. This game is so funny because the race can change drastically from beginning to end. Like one camel can get way out in front and you're like positive this camel is going to win the race, and then some crazy stuff happens. There's these like camels that move the opposite way, and sometimes they can pick up camels and move them backwards, and the camels like stack on top of each other. Very, very fun game. Beautiful table presence. You have like this 3D pop-up board. So Camel Up, one of my favorite games to play with a group, but I'm not sure that I would call it a party game. It's kind of in the same genre of a game like Sushi Go Party. I love Sushi Go Party. I think that's an excellent game, but I just don't think of that as a party game. That's a card drafting game. There's actually some, good strategy to that game. So even though you can play Sushi Go Party with, I think, up to 8 players, it's just, I wouldn't consider that a party game. And I would even put a game like Codenames in the gray area for me personally, because there's a lot of strategy to a game like Codenames. I know a lot of people think of that as a party game. If you've never played Codenames, that is a must play. There's a grid of all these cards with words on them, and you are trying to get your teammate to guess certain words on the grid, but not accidentally guess your opponent's words. And you have to use limited communication. You kind of have to link words together using another word. But we got to be careful of is if they might accidentally guess one of your opponent's words out there, or even worse, there's one assassin card, and if they accidentally choose that one, then you're just out of the round. You lose the round. So it's just kind of like a race to get the most words correct against the other team. But I don't really like Codenames with more than 4 players. You can play it like as a team game with as many people as you want, but personally I just prefer Codenames with 4 players, 2 teams of 2, and that's just been my personal experience. A lot of people do consider Codenames a party game, and by definition I think it is. I just don't really put it in the same category as some of the games I featured today. And the final game I want to feature real quick is called Wits and Wagers. This is a very popular party game, but if you've never played Wits and Wagers, this is definitely one to check out because this is a unique take on a trivia game. I really like the way this game does it. It asks you a question and it's going to have some kind of numerical answer. Everybody submits a guess to the answer. You don't have to really know the answer. Everybody submits a guess, and then the players get to bet on the answer they think is the closest to the right answer without going over, kind of like The Price is Right. But I just love that you don't have to know the answer, but you get to bet on the one you think is the closest. And I like that you have more than one betting chip too, so you can hedge your bet over multiple answers, or you can go all in on a single answer. And I just find this game to be a very clever take on a trivia game. And like I said, that one's very popular, so you're probably familiar with that one, just like Balderdash. But if you're not familiar with Balderdash, it's another excellent party game where you have a word and you get to make up a definition to that word, but then there's a real definition to the word that gets mixed in with all the fake definitions. You have to try to guess which one is the real definition. And if you vote for somebody else's, their fake definition, they get a point. So you're trying to be very convincing in your definitions you come up with. You want to make your definition sound like it's right out of the dictionary. and I just love the creativity that Balderdash brings to the table. So there you have it. Those are some party games that I actually enjoy. I'm not necessarily looking for any new recommendations on party games. We just don't play them that often, but I would be interested to know in the comments below, if you are a Euro gamer, if you like more strategy games, what are some party games that you enjoy and why? What makes it more interesting to a Euro gamer like myself? So that's more what I'm looking for in the comments this video, but anything you want to talk about, drop it in the comments. I'm always happy to read your comments and interact with all of you. Finally, there's a whole other genre of party games that I didn't even go into in this episode, and that would be these social deduction games where you're trying to, root out the traitor, or where you have elections and you try to vote people in and out of positions of power, and games like that I would definitely consider to be party games, but just offer a completely different experience than the games I featured on this episode. So I didn't feel like those really belonged in the same episode. So maybe I'll feature some of my social deduction games on a future episode. For now, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. Just click that subscribe button. That's the best way to help my channel grow. Share this video with all your board gaming friends. Tell them to click subscribe as well, because as long as my subscribers go up, I'm going to keep putting out content just like this, which is dedicated to discovering the lesser known board games of the world. I'm really happy to have all of you on this journey to discover the undiscovered games. There's so many out there to get to, and I can't wait to bring more episodes to you. So in the meantime, you can share, comment, like, subscribe, follow me over on Instagram. Say hi over there. I'm at undiscovered_games. I post a lot of cool pictures, written reviews over there as well. And if you want to support the channel further, there is a digital tip jar in the description below. It's just a PayPal link. If you want to buy me a cup of coffee, help me stay up late and make some more videos. I don't expect that whatsoever, but thank you to all of you out there who have donated. I really, really do appreciate that, and that is a great motivator for me to keep making content. Thanks everybody for watching. I will be back with another undiscovered game on the next episode. We're getting into a very busy time of year right now, so I'm going to try to get one out before Christmas, but if I don't, just bear with me. After the holidays settle down, after the new year, I will definitely get back on a normal posting schedule. So don't fear, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be back with some more episodes coming soon. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.